Welcome back to Jumpstart Code. In this video, we are going to use several of the input elements that we've learned about to create a form, and we are going to look at how to style it in a second video after. So this is what we would like to see, and it's nice and pretty, but in this video it's not going to be pretty. We're going to focus on just getting all these different components on the form. So you'll see here we've got a place to enter a name, we've got a place to enter an age. It's like a little survey. What's your favorite fast food? What streaming services do you watch? So let's get to this. I am now using VS Code. This is another text editor. It's downloadable if you just search for VS Code editor. I'll have a separate video where I'll explain that. So remember, the first thing is always create a folder that is going to contain your files. So my folder is here under my projects. It's going to be called Form Survey. There's no files in there right now, so I'm about to do that right now. So I'm going to open my folder. So I go and find that folder, single click on it. So here is the folder. Yes, I trust the authors. Click that off. Let's make a new file. And it will always ask you this, but the best way to tell it what the language is to just immediately do save as, and I'm going to name this file index.html. Right, so now it understands. We're going to apply some CSS later, some styling, but for right now, we are just going to focus on getting our elements on the page. So I start with doc type HTML, HTML, and I've got my head section. I've got my body section. My head section, I'll put a title, my survey, and maybe we'll actually put a title on this as well, H1, my survey. All right, this is always a good place to stop and check. So I'm going to save all, and I have the live server extension here in VS Code. So I can right click here and say open with live server, and it brought up my page over here. And so from now on, anytime I make a change and save, this will automatically be updated. If you're not using VS Code, then you'll just have to save and then click here to refresh your page. All right, so let's start with the first thing that we have here, which is going to be our form. So we're going to have a form element. This form, we don't have any backend, so we're not submitting it, but we're still going to use a form to contain all the elements that we have on the page. And the first thing that we're going to have is the input for the name. So type equals text, and I'm going to give it an ID, username, and if you're actually submitting it to a backend, you will need the name property as well. So it's just a good idea to go ahead and put that in there. Typically, they are the same value, right? Again, as you go, you really should watch. I save, go back over here. There's my text box, right? Now, I would like to put a label, associate a label with this text box. So I'm going to put a label here, and I'm going to associate it with that input element by assigning the for property to the ID that I've used, and then give it a label. So this label is now attached to this input element. So if I save, right, so I can type something in here, but also what you'll notice is if I click on name, it puts the cursor in that box. So that's the benefit of having the label there. If you've got lots of different elements, it's kind of a quicker way to put something in. All right, let's also add, we're going to ask for the age. So I'm going to set up another label. I'm going to set up an input called age. So I already kind of have a pattern here that I'm looking at. Type equals text, ID equals age, name equals age. Now, let's refresh, let's save, and a couple things. So if I want this second input to be on another line, then I have to control that. So we'll have to use a break. But let's see if the labels are working. You see, if I click here, it takes me to that box. If I click here, it takes me to that box. So let's add a break in here. Remember, a break is a single, doesn't have a closing tag, and you see it move me to the next line. Now, things are not going to look pretty right now. We're going to pretty it up in a second video. All right, so we've got this. But now, let's think about something. I want to type in a name. Right now, I could type in letters for my age. I really don't want to do that. So maybe the better element type to use is number. Right? So if I change that, and now you see I'm only able to type numbers in here. If I try to type letters in here, I'm actually trying right now, it won't let me. So that's a nice way to do that. Before we actually get to the radio buttons and the checkboxes, I want to show you something else. So let's say we're going to submit this form. So we're going to have an input type equals submit. It's a very special type that is used for forms. And I'll say value, which is going to be the text that goes on this button. So this is going to create a button. And we'll say click me. All right, that's the way I have the other one set up, so I'll do it this way. All right, so let me show you what happens. So I type in something here. I can type in an age here, right? But one thing that I want to show you about this submit is there's a little bit of error checking that can be done when you submit. So for example, if I want to make sure that a name is entered and make sure that you cannot submit this without entering a name, then I want to add something onto my input element for the name, and you can put it anywhere in here. I'll put it at the end. I'm going to add required, and I don't have to say required equals something, just required. Now, look at the change that now happens. If I try to click this without entering a name, it tells me that this must be submitted. So this is, again, kind of a little bit of error checking that can be done before your form is actually submitted. So, you know, the whole process of doing this is a little bit of an iterative process to create the things that you're looking for. Now, if you look at my other, what we're trying to create here, there's a box around name and age with user info. That can be done with something called a field set. So a field set is how you can group certain elements together. So I'm going to add a field set here, and I'm going to make the closing tag after this. Now, when you add something in like this, you really should fix the indenting on your code, because these things are now sort of a part of this additional component. So let's see what happens when we add that. Right? You see this box was put around here. If I want to then put some sort of a label on that, then inside of my field set, I can put something called a legend, and I'll just put user info here. You see now we have this nice little box around these two elements, and they are grouped together, right? So let me add my radio buttons here. So I'm going to next, after this break, I'm going to ask you, what is your favorite fast food? Again, I really recommend, as you make small changes, take a look and see if you got what you wanted. So we see that that was added there. All right. So let us add our radio buttons for that. So I want to have a label. My label, if I want it to look like the button and then the data on the right side of the button, then that means the button goes first. So I'm going to use a radio button, input. Actually, this doesn't go here. This goes before my button. So the submit is going to be at the end. So it's going to go here. Input, type equals radio. And this is going to be, I'm going to have a group of buttons that are all going to represent a type of food. This particular one is going to be burger. And I need to, so I give it an ID of burger. And I also want to give it a value. These IDs and values become very important for backend processing or for JavaScript processing. Then here's my label for, and you use the ID, and it's going to say burger. Okay. Before I add them all, let's see if that worked. All right, so we've got that. I want to put a break right before this click me. So I want to have several of these. So I'm going to copy these, paste, paste. They're all going to be food. This one is going to be tacos. And so the value is going to be tacos. And this is going to say tacos. And this one is going to be wings. This is going to be wings. And this is going to be wings. All right, so you see they're all on the same line, and maybe that's what I want. If you didn't, then you would need to use a break key to separate them out. All right, so you see how this is so much easier when you work on it sort of one thing at a time that you can focus your attention on and make sure that that is working the way you want before you move on. All right, so now after this group of things, I'm going to put another break, and now I'm going to ask you another question. I'm going to ask you, what streaming services do you use? Now, actually, before I do that, there's another thing that I want to double check on my buttons. So let's save, look over here. So you see that these buttons are connected, so I can only do one at a time. Also, if I click now look, my labels are not working because I should be able to click the label. So I need to go take a look at that. I think I just had a copy and paste error. But also notice only one can be on at a time. So let me see what's going on with my labels. This is, yeah, the problem is I have to change the labels here, what each one is for. So let's save. Again, this is why you want to work a little bit at a time and check. So do you see I can click the label, and that's clicking the button, or I can click the button. So it's kind of nice that you can just click anywhere in there. The reason they're all connected is because they all have the same name. If I were to, for example, change this to Food X, but I don't change that one, all right? So watch what happens now. Actually, let's do it this way. Let's just put a typo in one. Let's say this one. I just have one. Oh, it's not correct. So now I can click burger, but look, they're not all grouped together. Something is wrong because the burger is in its own little world. So you have to go look and see, did you make them all the same? And no, they don't all have the same name. So we want to do that, right? One other little thing I want to show you for the age, that's typically going to be a smaller number. So if you want to change the size of that text box, then here in age, we're going to say size equals 4, for example. And actually, size does not apply to a number text box. There might be another way to control that. But just to show you what size can do, if you were entering the name, if you wanted this to be a longer text box, if I said size equals 20 here. Let's make it even bigger. Let's make it 30. And I'll save. And you'll see it got longer, right? But we're not going to do that for right now, so I'm going to take that off. All right, so we have our everything except our checkboxes here. So let me add the checkboxes really quickly. So after what streaming services do you use, then we are going to have very similar thing. I want the checkbox to go first. So input type equals checkbox and ID equals Netflix. And then I'll have a label for Netflix. All right, let's check this. Because if that one works, we'll do a little copy and paste. There we go. All right, so if I want to put several more, and maybe I want these all to go on a separate line, so I'll put a break. I'm going to copy this. And let's make this one Hulu. Let's do a check. All right, so we see we can check either or both. We can click on the little box there. All right, so we can add 2 more really quickly. And so this one is going to be Disney. And this one is going to be Amazon. Let's see what we have. All right, so it looks like we have all of that working. Looks like we've got to submit this field here. One last thing, we're going to add one more button at the very end, which is going to be type equals reset. And it's going to say reset. And this is, again, a very special type that allows you to easily refresh your page. So if I've clicked something here, if I've got something there, I've got something there, I've got this and this, and I want to refresh this page reset. If I click reset, then it automatically resets. So the submit type and the reset type are very special in that way. All right, so we will work on prettying this up in the next video. But as you can see here, creating all these different elements on your form is just a matter of taking your time and working on one thing at a time.